Fascination or fear? We all seem to have kind of an awe for sharks.
Yeah, fear on this side,
yes.
for sure. And for North Carolina, it is something special. This state is home to the longest shark study in the country.
Well, meteorologist Elisa Raffa, I was taking a look behind me just to make sure that this wasn't a shark coming this way. Well, she was on board the shark tagging vessel that you see right here to teach us how one of nature's most feared marine animals is impacted by our rapidly changing oceans.
We all know this pair of jaws. Even the smallest ones can seem so dangerous. Rows and rows of teeth that immediately spark fear. But when you get up close and get a hold of its soft and squishy feel, you have a moment of shock, but then gratitude.
Okay, bye. Thank you for science.
For the help these sharks give to ocean research.
You get that on video, no one else will believe me.
I'm still catching my breath, but this is routine for these scientists and the captain's crew at UNC's Institute of Marine Sciences.
You took us to a beautiful spot.
You got that right. Did you get a picture of the lighthouse?
Captain Stacy Davis and his team have been taking UNC researchers on these waters for the past 50 years. Marine zoologist Dr. Frank Schwartz started collecting data on fish and sharks in the late 60s, officially starting the shark survey off the Carolina coast in 1972. That makes it the oldest, longest-running shark study in America.
The fish don't read our textbooks, so they're kind of doing what they want to do, and we're still trying to collect enough data to rewrite the textbooks.
Now marine ecologist Dr. Joel Fodry is at the helm.
3 or 4 decades ago, you might have a mix of things like duskies and sandbars, and these are 5 to 7, even 8 foot long sharks. Black tips, you see the occasional tiger shark, the occasional bull shark.
He continues the survey of sharks in the open Atlantic every 2 weeks from April through November.
It's much more dominated by 3 foot long Atlantic sharp-nosed sharks now. And then every now and then you see some black noses.
The changes are easier to track with 50 years of data.
Our funding cycles are typically 2-year grants, 3-year grants. So it's very rare to have a program that's been sampling over 50 years.
So rare that these researchers lovingly call this data the unicorn, because what makes it even more rare is the consistency in the process. Every year for the last half-century, UNC researchers have taken the Capricorn out to sea in the very same spot. The 48-foot-long research vessel is equipped with lines, hooks, and a whole lot of character. This crew leaves at 7 a.m. sharp to go deep into the open Atlantic off the coast of Shackleford Banks in Carteret County. A few miles in, and it's time to crank the line and drop the net in.
How do you know when you got fish?
When we pull the net up.
That's the only way you know.
That's the only way we know.
Net up, fish plopped on board. These passengers get sorted and hooked. About 80 to 100 fish hang on the line. That zips out and gets dropped into the ocean, trailing the boat for about a mile. Then after an hour, it's time to reel them in.
Male Atlantic sharpnose, 75, 92, tag number 5138. Female, 80, 98.
The sharks are on board for less than 2 minutes, while a researcher jots down some stats.
We're getting species, we're getting fork length, so that little notch, and we're getting total length. Then we'll get the sex, so male or female, and then we're putting a tag in the ones that we release.
Sharp nose, male, 74 and a half, 91.
Yep.
5139.
Yep.
Then they're tossed back into their home. Part of the data comes from simple spaghetti tags.
Just a little plastic tube that has our phone number, our email, and it has a unique number for that tag.
Information that's crucial to the process.
So when we release that fish, if that fish swims around and maybe stays here or maybe goes north and someone else catches it, that individual can call us and say, hey, I caught this shark with this tag number in Virginia or right in the same place where we released it, it may be.
The phone rings with that call about 4 or 5 times a year.
And And so over years and years and years of these tag returns, we can start to figure out where these sharks move seasonally. Male, sharp nose, 74, 90 and a half.
Other data
I have never tagged a shark.
comes from under the microscope.
We have some in the collection. They're dead and preserved, but it's, they're pretty charismatic.
Dr. Lily Hughes is a fish geneticist at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. In 1996, the museum acquired pieces from Dr. Frank Schwartz's original shark survey.
It's been incorporated into our larger fish collection at the museum.
It includes preserved fish, field notes, and journals.
We have 1.4 million specimens. His collection contributed about 200,000 fish specimens, sharks, all kinds of fish from these kinds of trips.
Today, the records act as an immense database for researchers.
Back when Frank Schwartz started this survey, and back when the museum started, they didn't really know about DNA. They didn't know how to preserve organisms to preserve the DNA. So we know more now.
And they add new samples of fish tissue from shark trips like these for genetic analysis.
We can learn about new species that are, genetically distinct from things that look pretty similar.
Diversity in species type has been one of the biggest changes observed over this 50-year study.
In the first 20 years of the survey, there were a lot of duskies, sandbars, silkies, some bull sharks, some tiger sharks.
On our one day out, we caught about 30 sharks.
Sharp nose, sharp nose, sharp nose.
All the same, small, 3 to 4 foot sharks known for a long, pointy snout.
In the mid-'80s on through the '90s and early 2000s, it really shifted to a lot of sharp-nosed sharks and black-nosed sharks, and they're much smaller sharks.
Much smaller sharks is the trend across all species.
Some fisheries, either because of gears or management, can target big individuals.
Mainly because of fishing pressure.
It just takes time to grow big individuals. And so if you're harvesting at a certain rate, you never allow any individual to grow to be very big.
That is only now starting to ease some after decades of overfishing, fueled by fear from the movie Jaws. Some of these species also respond to summertime water temperatures.
25 degrees Celsius appears to be kind of an important break point. When it gets to be 25 degrees or above, we have a summertime assemblage of sharks. And that's sharp nose, black tips, a few spinners, bonnet heads.
But over the last 50 years, our oceans are warming. Carolina seas have a 2-degree fever in the key month of September since the 1980s.
The longer in the year that we're seeing those temperatures of 25 degrees C, the longer we're going to have those particular sharks here.
Shifting the seasonality of sharks migrating through the Carolinas.
So sharks that used to get here in early June may now be showing up in May. And sharks that used to pass by here in September may not pass by now until the first or second week of October.
This can have trickle-down impacts across the food chain since different sharks eat different things.
It's very hard to document all the ways that sharks affect an ecosystem because they're big, highly mobile, kind of diffuse animals that we don't get to take into the lab and observe in the same way.
Which is why the longevity of this study.
Male, 76. 92, female, 74, 90 and a half, 5108.
Is so crucial.
Every interaction with scientists in a fish, like that's data, that's a story about where you collected it, what the conditions were like when you collected it. And if you keep doing that over time, you see changes.
Some sharks can live up to 20 years and their impact at home can be complex. So their story is a long one.
You can't really figure out how the populations are changing in just 2 or 3 years, or even 8 years, or even 15 years. Male, sharp nose.
Just as powerful as they might look,
5129.
Their story can be key to rediscovering our rapidly changing oceans.
Which is why we hope to stay out here as long as we can for decades or even centuries. We'll see.
Meteorologist Elisa Raffa, Queen City News.